A Hoosier native and lifelong investigative journalist, I already had extensive knowledge of Indiana corruption. Only this time, I was observing from the inside, and what I saw terrified me. It happened when I was hired to work the Delphi murder trial as a fact-finding investigator.
Welcome to the Delphi Dirt. I'm your host, Erica Morris. I hope everyone is doing well. Hopefully you all are staying warm. And I hope everyone had a good weekend. Today's episode is titled Words Matter. And boy, do they matter. Before I jump into the meat of the situation, I want to talk for a couple minutes about how much words matter in terms of content creation and people who call themselves advocates and journalists. I had to kind of swallow those words, choke on those words a little bit. Over the last 2 weeks, we have seen an embarrassing attempt to hurt the credibility of the people who are steadfast in the resolve of the Dropbox being the nexus. It happened again this weekend. If those individuals have not already gone back and looked at their behavior and realized how embarrassing it was, both last weekend and this weekend, then they still have some rude awakenings coming. I refuse to get in the mud with people who are not qualified to question or critique my job or how I do it. I sure as hell will not get in the mud with people who fling insults and create completely false rumors about good people. But I will say that words matter and that there are consequences for the choices of the words that are used. Falsely accusing a teacher of harming children is about as low as you can go. Falsely accusing a parent of inappropriate behavior with their own child is about as low as you can go. But desperate times call for desperate measures, right? There is a desperate need on the side of this opposition. I hate the term state actors. I hate the term controlled opposition. But there is no better way at this moment that I can find or choose to find to label these individuals. Falsely accusing a parent of harming his child is about as low as you can go. And I'm going to tell you something. It takes a hell of a lot more class and grace and personal strength of character for someone like Prof to not lose his shit and to instead take a deep breath and spend all weekend working after the crap that was thrown at him this weekend. The efforts out there to defame and disparage are being done out of desperation. We know there are cops behind the scenes who are in full-blown panic mode, as they should be. If you think they're panicking now, wait until the end of this episode. Because when I take the gloves off, I don't sit and call names. I do what Erica does best, which is analyze information and then present it in a professional manner. But the stunts that were pulled this weekend will have consequences. That's why I'm not a big fan of YouTube in terms of cases, because any idiot out there can call themselves a reporter when they're not. They don't have the training. They don't have the integrity that goes along with doing this job. And if those people don't yet understand why they weren't chosen to work this case or this trial, the last 2 weekends should answer that question for them. You have never heard me or Prof or Chris or anyone else on the side of truth and justice, and Rick and these girls go out and behave in such an abhorrent manner. First of all, you'll never catch me drinking on a live. Some of us grew up. Some of us know that when you start drinking and you go out and hurl insults, you embellish, you say things that can get you in a lot of trouble. And people are going to be facing some trouble for the things they've done. I don't need to sit here and define that for anyone. Every day that you attempt to divide and conquer those of us who are collaborating, all you do is strengthen our resolve. All you do is remind us why we are fighting this fight. And I gain more respect for Prof every time one of you opens your mouth and tells a lie. This continued effort to ruin people's lives only speaks to the desperation of those who falsely accused, arrested, charged, and convicted Rick Allen. It only speaks to the desperation of those who falsely arrested, accused, and framed Erica Morse and all the others who have been in my position, like Todd Click, like my sources in Indiana. Words matter. And I did an episode this weekend where I laid out the expungement of my false arrests and charges. And it appears as though those who lack emotional intelligence also lack the ability to go to my case and enter my name. I don't care what some drunk thinks, some drunk who really isn't doing as well as she would like people to think she is. Listen, if I want to go find myself a 76-year-old sugar daddy and take over his land, I can call myself wealthy too. I don't have to go shack up with somebody and wait for him to die in order to pay my bills. And I sure as hell don't have to do a crap-ass live out of a garage and beg for $130 for transportation, which, by the way, is the going rate for an 8-ball these days in the Indy area. Trust me, I can go low if we need to, but I choose not to 98% of the time. One of these days, these people will look back on their choices and realize the grave mistakes they made, and that, sadly, that time will not come until they have hit full rock bottom. And as close as one of those people is to rock bottom, he's not there yet. Oh, but he will be soon, because there are consequences, because words matter. I've reached the point where I have zero tolerance left for this type of behavior. You have pushed this side into even more laser focus, and that is something that should probably scare some folks. I don't need to sit and levy threats. I don't need to raise my fists to be strong. The truth is strong enough. This case is bad enough without a bunch of drunks and junkies sitting there trying to defame good professional people. Listen, I'm going to say this real quick. People get upset with Prof because of how he responds sometimes, how aggressive he can be. I admire the passion that he brings to this case. And he has done me a huge service of bringing me back from the trauma and the anger and the resentment and bitterness that I have felt now for a long time over what's been done to me. No one deserves to be illegally run out of their home, illegally and falsely arrested, illegally and falsely charged, having their face plastered all over the papers for crimes they did not commit, like Rick Allen. If you don't recognize this playbook, perhaps you should, because it's been done before, and it was successful before. And as I said the other night, Erica 2, Keystone Cop 0, because they failed with me. But Prof brings me back and reminds me what matters in this. And sometimes those conversations can be harsh. But you know what? They're needed. Because at the end of the day, what I have endured will never equate to what Rick has suffered, to what Rick is going through, to what Kath and their family is enduring. It will never equate to the pain these parents feel, because I know what I know. I know people are out there questioning things right now. I've seen the messages. I've received the messages. I can't imagine being in the position of anyone who genuinely loved Abby and Libby and watching this chaos ensue. And this case deserves voices of reason. And believe it or not, agree with us or not, I really don't care. Prof and Erica, we are the voices of reason in this case. These other content creators would have never lost their minds had we not gone straight for this Dropbox and Keegan Kline and Ron Logan. When we talk about case closed because of Reese's interviews and his information, that's not an overstatement. If Chris and I, as investigators, had been allowed to chase this theory all along, as we requested, by the way, not that I owe anyone an explanation, because I do not. By the way, it's not an investigator's job to do a family tree. Stop embarrassing yourself. You don't know what my job is. You don't know what my job was. And I will be damned if I explain it or justify it to someone who behaves like a teenage mean girl in high school. You people are embarrassing yourselves. And there will be consequences for the words used this weekend and last weekend, because words do, in fact, matter. So you keep slinging your mud, and we will continue to weed out who is here for Rick and these girls and who is here for pure bullying and entertainment. Because those comment sections are extremely telling. It takes a lot of strength for two people who are being completely disparaged and defamed to sit there with notebooks for 2 hours and ignore all of the crap and all of the lies just to focus on the comment section. But man, we learned things this weekend. There were about probably 15 or 20 clues in that live that actually pushed us forward. So thank you. Thank you for outing yourselves. Thank you for confirming our suspicions. To the person who has been playing the Allen family all along, I've got your number, honey. I have all along, and that's why you don't like me. That's why you've played all sides of this fence. Because you know I see right through you. And I will continue to see right through you. I cannot be swayed, I cannot be fooled, and I sure as hell cannot be bought. The best thing that was ever done for this case was for Chris and I to be brought into it. Because as you are about to find out today, there are people who were entrusted with Rick Allen's life who failed him and who should be questioned further about their relationships in this case and beyond. Now, I have said time and time again, and I will say it again, I am in a unique position in this case, and therefore I am in a unique position to tell this story. And unlike 99% of the people out there telling this story, I am in a unique position to tell it accurately and truthfully, and to share things that occurred behind the scenes that no one else knows about. Not only am I an investigative journalist with 35 years of experience, so I'm always sniffing out things that don't make sense, but I am a licensed private investigator. But also, I am the only person on the planet who had the exact same attorneys as Richard Allen at the exact same time he had them. Now I want you to think about that for a second. Two people falsely accused of crimes they did not commit, just living their lives, doing what they're supposed to do, suddenly hit with false charges, suddenly finding their lives turned upside down by a corrupt system, a corrupt group of cops, a corrupt group of public officials, and a bunch of well-placed PR nightmares with no morals, no integrity, who are there to confuse and disorient everyone who is trying to uncover the truth. See, I don't talk about my resume. I don't feel the need to, but believe it or not, I've done PR. I was hired as a PR director to run 85 restaurants for the #1 brand in the world years ago. I don't need to tout myself as some type of a PR genius. I am a PR genius. And I don't have to send nude photos of myself to cops and investigators in order to prove how good I am at PR. I can do PR with my clothes on. Not too long after Rick's arrest and the assignment of the attorneys, I would say it was probably April to May of 2023. That is when Rick first started questioning whether or not he could trust his attorneys. Yeah, we've never talked about this. Oh, but today we will. He began asking if he could trust them. And the question was posed to Chris and I on multiple occasions over the next 2 years. In the beginning, we were steadfast. We believed in what we were being told, that everybody was on the same page, everybody was fighting for Rick's innocence, everybody was there for a common goal. Over the next several months into a year, the questions continued. My suspicion was that there was somebody at Westville putting things into his head. We knew that Rick was being drugged with Haldol and that he was making these crazy statements about things that he never did. And I'm not just talking about the false confessions related to the girls. I'm talking about the false confessions related to his own family. Things that he ended up confessing to that never happened. Taking the lives of people who are still alive. That's what Haldol does. When you are force-fed psychotic, antipsychotic drugs, you tend to have hallucinations. So, shame on me. That if I failed him, that's, I think, where I failed him the biggest, was not investigating the lawyers. Not only did I fail him in that regard, but I failed myself. Because when I found myself falsely accused, I then ran to those very lawyers for help. The very first person I messaged the night I found out about my warrant was Andy Baldwin. When I couldn't get a hold of Andy right away, I messaged Jen, and she told me that she would handle it. Now, you have to understand, when these charges were levied against me, Rick had just been convicted. Just. Like, they started with opening the case back on the 27th of October, but they didn't actually do anything about it until the end of November. And that's when they officially came up with these bullshit charges, and then the warrant came out, and I was working with Mike on the motion to correct error. Oh, apparently I didn't work on that either. Let's look at some receipts, shall we? Of course I worked on the motion to correct error. Of course I did. He didn't have access to discovery. I had the discovery. Chris was done with him. The way he talked to Chris and the way he demeaned Chris and treated her like she was nothing, she had already been screwed out of her pay. She was not going to continue working for someone who mistreated her and abused her the way he did. There's a lot you all don't know. And quite frankly, don't need to know, because it's just mud and muck. So this warrant comes out for my arrest. I think I was on the phone with Osbrook when I learned about it. I think Chris and I we were there working on stuff. I told Osbrook right away. He pulled the PCA and he's like, oh my God, this is junk. That's the one thing I will say about him, complimentary, is that he did jump right away into pulling that PCA, getting me the police report, and really establishing right off the bat what they had done to frame me. So for that, I am appreciative, but that doesn't negate all of the other stuff that has been done. I'll give credit where it's due, even if I don't like the person. That's a sign of maturity and emotional intelligence. See, I don't pick and choose what I need to in order to create a narrative. That's not how adults operate. You know, in the comments section the other night, I saw that Osbrook was there going, lay off her on this cat thing, man. She was completely innocent. And I saw the drunk or heard the drunk going back and forth. Michael, let me tell you something. When you pick and choose what an attorney says and decide that you're going to believe him on one thing but not believe him on another, just like you do with the Reese Davis interview. Oh, I'll believe the stuff that suits my narrative, but I will ignore and demean him on the things that I don't agree with. That's not emotional maturity. It sure as hell is not the sign of someone who wants to call themselves an investigator, without a license, by the way. That's why I was picked for this job and Chris was picked for this job and not others. We have the ability to discern stupidity from truth, and we have the ability to keep our mouths shut. Anyway, I went to the same lawyers for help that Rick had, and they told me they would take care of it. I was instantly told. I was told on the day of conviction, on the day of sentencing, when we all left the courthouse together, the defense, minus Chris, because she was back home standing in solidarity with Kathy and the family who chose not to go to the sentencing. I went to deliver some messages to Rick in the few minutes that I was able to speak with him, and also because I needed to meet with my attorneys. So we all left the courthouse after sentencing and went back to that bank building just outside of Delphi where the defense was holed up every day during trial for lunch. In that meeting, I was told by all three lawyers that they would be working as a team to get me off these false charges. So on the day of Rick Allen's sentencing, I was under the belief that I had three lawyers, Jen Auger, Andy Baldwin, and Brad Rossi. Brad was actually, according to him, supposed to come up from Logansport and make the initial appearance as my attorney. And then all of that suddenly went awry. And I'm guessing it has to do with my court TV appearance. Let me say this. If you can't move on from someone's trauma and fear, then you have no desire to move on. I have apologized profusely for the missteps that I made that night. I was terrified and I was in fear for my life. I did not think I was going to live much longer. And if anybody can't recognize those fears and those feelings and the urgent need that I felt to get that information out, then you're not here for the truth. That's just plain and simple. There are a lot of people here who are actually not here for the truth. Rick Allen's life is not entertainment. Erica Morse's life is not entertainment. We have the right to live and survive. And I am getting more and more fed up by the day that people are out here wasting airtime, valuable airtime, to slander and defame instead of working in tandem to get Rick out of that hellhole. Like, I'm just fed up. We know what our objectives are. We know what our mission is. And that's to get justice for these girls and get Rick out of that prison. Anyway, so I don't want to get too much into the mud about all of the continuances that were filed while I was being told to stay at home. They're trying to get the warrant quashed. You can see from the CSS here that it was continuance after continuance after continuance. That none of these attorneys actually appeared on my behalf this whole time. They never showed up to a single court hearing. And so by about January, I started asking Chris real hard, Chris, do you think I can trust my attorneys? And she said to me, you sound like Rick. And I was like, oh my God, how did we miss this? And the answer was, we were reading millions of pages and my life was falling apart and I was oh God, you guys, I look back on this and I wonder how I even survived those 2 years with everything that was thrown at me. Everything. I was also grieving the loss of several people close to me. And I'm amazed at the fact that I even made it out of bed in the mornings, let alone had to deal with all of this crap. While working 2 jobs, by the way, because I was working the job for which I wasn't being paid, which was Delphi, and then I was having to work full time to pay the bills. I was working 100 hours a week and still managed to memorize millions of pages of discovery. Nobody I challenge anybody to try to live a minute in my shoes. They couldn't survive. So I had a Zoom meeting with one of my attorneys, and that was the attorney of record on my case. And in that meeting, I asked some hard questions. I wanted to know why Andy and Brad hadn't done what they said they would do. I was really challenging what was being said to me. I was told that my attorney would be coming up to Michigan City and doing depositions, deposing the person who filed the false report against me, the witness who made the false statement to police. And by about halfway through the meeting, I started to settle down a little bit and really get focused on how we were going to beat this case and these false charges. And then I mentioned Pat Cicero. And that's when the entire mood of this situation shifted, because I brought up the police report and said, I have a serious concern that Pat Cicero from the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department was in my house the day of that illegal foreclosure with the homeowner, and how my cat ended up dead with those two men there. And let me just real quick say something about that video and the house. I bought a house that was in reprehensible condition for $25,000 cash, and I was almost done paying it off. And what you saw in that video was not mine. It was the previous homeowner's. That's how he lived, with children in that house. If I have to start posting photos of what that place looked like the day we bought it, or the day I bought it, versus what it looked like a year later, I'll do it. I have no problem humiliating people who are straight up lying about me. I bought a house that was in horrific condition because it was a 6-bedroom house. I put $40,000 into rehabbing it. We had gotten the main floor really good, like decent enough that I was okay with being there. I mean, there were months we didn't even live in that house because it wasn't even inhabitable. That was not my mess. That was not my junk. I was doing a favor to someone by taking that house off their hands, because that person was about to lose their children to CPS for the condition of that house. Michigan City was in a housing crisis at the time, and 6-bedroom place gave me I have always wanted to have a place where women could go and hide from domestic violence when their abusers are cops and public officials. Because the DV shelter in Michigan City, 2 cops sit on that board of directors. So when women run from abusive cops, they're running straight to a shelter that 2 cops sit on the board of. And these women were telling me horror stories. I was working in the shelter system at the time. The huge property across the street had been bought, and it was being turned into a community center and with housing for the unhoused. And I saw this 6-bedroom house that needed to be completely gutted from top to bottom after it was first cleaned out. I wanted to take that whole upstairs and make it an area where women could go to with children if they had to run from abusive cops. Because as someone who was experiencing abusive cops, I understood the terror that ensues when you are being stalked and terrorized by people with badges and guns. It's a unique terror, and it's something that most people won't understand until they live it and endure it. So anyway, that's the truth about that house. And so the video that was taken, if you'll notice, when that person walks in, he doesn't go into the living room area. He doesn't show all of the remodeling that had been done in those rooms. No, he goes straight up for that area that that pig, made and had not been finished being gutted yet. We hadn't gotten to that upstairs. Anyway, so I'm sitting in this Zoom meeting with my lawyer, and I mentioned that I had a real concern about Pat Cicero being in my house alone with that homeowner. And to his credit, it was Osbrook who pulled that police report and sent it to me, because my lawyer never bothered to get discovery, and she never gave any documentation or discovery to my new lawyer. he and I had to turn around and seek all that out on our own. So the more I learned, the more I kept asking that same question that Rick was asking. Can I trust my lawyers? What the hell's going on here? They're not doing their jobs. They're not following through with the promises they made. They're not even showing up for court appearances. It's continuance after continuance after continuance. So I mentioned this thing about Cicero being in my house. And my lawyer's like, wait, what? And I said, Pat Cicero, the guy who never went to the crime scene in Delphi, from LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, who somehow was hand-selected by the prosecution, by Nick McClelland and company, to get up on that stand and testify about that crime scene while only having looked at pictures that were taken by other cops. Okay? There was no baseline of truth for him to look at. There were only the photos taken by the cops. The response I got sent chills down my spine. Okay? It wasn't, Pat Cicero was in your house? It wasn't, wait a minute, you're telling me that the guy who testified against Rick was in your house alone days before he testified against Rick? Like, this is serious shit, guys. This is tampering at its finest. This is witness intimidation at its finest. This is frame job at its finest. You want to know what the response was? Oh, I'll call Pat. I said, what? Oh, I'll call Pat. Excuse me? You just cross-examined this cop for your other client, Rick Allen. Why are you behaving as though you have this man on speed dial? In that moment, I answered the question that Rick Allen had been asking all along. And in that moment, my answer became a hard no. No, Rick, you cannot trust them. Because something is very, very wrong here. I got off that Zoom meeting and I called Chris in tears. I told her what happened and I said, not only can I not trust her, but we gave Rick Allen bad advice. We told him to trust those lawyers, and oh my God. Oh my God. What has happened here? What don't we know? If my lawyer ever went to Michigan City and deposed people, I don't know it because my new attorney never received that information. I tried like hell to find out what occurred between that February Zoom meeting and the March court appearance where my lawyer finally showed up, ignored me pretty much the whole time, treated me like I was an enemy. It was the weirdest situation. And then went and sat next to the prosecutor who knew I was innocent and was falsely trying to convict me of crimes I didn't commit. And she sat next to him and flirted with him the whole time. I was stunned. I sat in that gallery area just in shock. And I was fuming. Like, what the hell is happening here? Why is my lawyer buddying up to all these guys in LaPorte County? And then as I'm sitting here watching this, I'm thinking, what the hell just happened at this trial? What the hell just happened at this trial? Words matter. Oh, I'll call Pat. I have never felt more betrayed than I did in that moment. And that is when I began digging into the links to LaPorte County. And it wasn't too long after that the United States Attorney's Office in South Bend, Indiana, issued a press release about a former cop named Neil Lockman, who had just pled guilty to the most heinous crimes that can be committed and was sentenced to 54 years in prison. 2 weeks after my lawyer, my first lawyer, and those others withdrew from the case, this happened. An indictment was filed in March of 2025 against a former LaPorte County Sheriff's deputy named Neil Lockman. And the contents of this file are so heinous and so destructive to children throughout Indiana that the majority of the docs are under seal, as was the indictment. The indictment itself was under seal. The United States of America, by its counsel, Tina Nome, acting United States Attorney for the Northern District of Indiana, through Hannah T. Jones, Assistant United States Attorney, having moved this court for an order sealing this complaint until further order of this court, with the limited exception that agents be permitted to enter defendant's arrest warrant information into the NCIC database, the National Crime Information Center database. It is hereby ordered that motion is granted and the clerk is directed to seal this case until further order of this court, with the limited exception that agents be permitted to enter defendant's arrest warrant information into the NCIC database. Look at the date on this, March 21st of 2025. 2 weeks after my lawyer called me screaming and telling me that she was withdrawing from my case. Now, this particular case, I cannot say it enough, is so heinous. And what was done to the victims in this case is so heinous. I am going to skip the majority of the documents that I have in this, and I'm going to send them to Prof. We discussed this over the weekend. He is the teacher. He is the one who is much more comfortable going line by line by line to lay all this out for you. I am going to introduce this, and then I am going to turn this over to him to lay this out for you if he so chooses. Because this is what we mean when we say case solved, okay? Neil Lockman's arrest and Neil Lockman's hidden arrest and conviction play a role in taking down other offenders. We have found not only similarities in this case and others, but we have found the same attorneys or the same attorney showing up over and over with these offenders. That's how I know this case is solved, because we are just at the point of putting the pieces together. But we have what we need. It's all there. And that's why people are panicking too. So let's go to the sentencing memo. A former 15-year police officer knows to respect the law. Mr. Lockman, nonetheless, persisted for years against one victim for at least 4 years, 2015 through 2019, another victim for over 3 years, 2018 to 2021, and then a third victim for nearly 2 years, 2023 through 2025. The sheer duration of his criminal conduct takes this case well outside the norm. If one can commit such atrocious crimes over a decade unflinchingly against numerous children, there is a little measure of hope that something new will offer the degree of deterrence and public protection that this record commands. Hidden in the darkness of his home was much more. He had amassed over 55,000 images. Over 55,000 images. And 25,000 videos of child CSAM on various devices. This does not happen overnight. It is the most sprawling the court has encountered. In equivalent guideline terms, this would be over 1.9 million images. Much of this collection exists outside the calculus for these 3 counts. How would one even begin to identify the number of victims in this collection? The criminal charges and conviction of Neil Lockman was hidden from the public. It was minimized tremendously in the press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office. And partially it was done to protect the victims, which I completely understand and agree with. However, there were 26 victims listed under pseudonyms. They gave aliases to these children, and these children ranged from infants to about 12 to 13 years old. 55,000 images. 25,000 videos. The most the court has ever encountered. Neil Lockman produced over 55,000 images and 25,000 videos. And in his plea agreement, which I have pulled this portion from, I agree to forfeit to the United States the following property: an Apple iPhone 13, a silver HP laptop, a white HP laptop, a black Seagate external hard drive, a silver Acer laptop, a blue HP laptop, a black iPhone with a broken back, a silver iPhone with cracked screen, and a cardboard display with printed images of child CSAM. This next portion comes from Neil Lockman's allocution, meaning what he pled to from his plea agreement, what he allocated to and confessed to the court, essentially, in these crimes. Between on or about June 1st, 2023 and March 17th, 2025, whatever is behind this black wall is so heinous it had to be redacted from the file, from the court record. Between on or about September 22nd, 2015 and September 22nd, 2019, while recording with my cell phone, I used minor victim 2, who was under the age of 18, to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing a visual depiction of such conduct. I then saved the videos to my cell phone and distributed them in interstate and foreign commerce throughout the internet via a messaging application. Between on or about June 1st, 2018 and November 5th, 2021, using my cell phone and computer, I produced a video of minor victim 3, who was under the age of 18. I produced this video with the intent to transport and distribute it. I titled the video and set the video to music. I knew of the content, character, and nature of the video, and I acknowledge that the video was, quote, obscene, unquote, for purposes of 18 U.S.C. 1465. I knowingly used an interactive computer service to distribute images from the video to an individual located outside the state of Indiana. My use of the internet to distribute the images implicated interstate and foreign commerce. I do not dispute that all videos and images described herein were produced using materials that had been mailed, shipped, or transported in interstate or foreign commerce. All videos and images described herein were also transported in interstate or foreign commerce by my distribution of them through the internet. All videos and images described herein were produced in the Northern District of Indiana. Now, we're going to get back to this a little bit later, but I want you to look at the names. Okay, this plea agreement is signed by Neil Lockman, former LaPorte County Sheriff's Deputy Neil Lockman. Let's get that clear, okay? Former LaPorte County Sheriff's Deputy Neil Lockman, who acknowledged that he was creating this junk while he was employed by the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. And his former department hasn't said a word about this. Not a word. His former boss, Andy Hynek, the one accused right now of allegedly drugging women in bars throughout Northwest Indiana and then following them out, following them home, pulling them over, subjecting them to random field testing, knowing that they allege he drugged them. And then when they refuse his sexual advances, allegedly arresting them for resisting law enforcement. The LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, the same department where Major Pat Cicero works. You remember that name, Major Pat Cicero, the guy who never visited the crime scene yet testified against Rick Allen using only photographs of the crime scene taken by other cops. Oh, did I mention that Hynek is reportedly being investigated by an ISP cop under Jerry Holman, whose name I can no longer say, or I will be hit with a $17 million defamation suit for reporting the truth. Oh, I'll call Pat. Words matter. Words matter. This plea agreement was filed on May 13th of 2025. The reason that is so significant is because of the arrest that happened next. June 25th, 2025. The United States District Court, Northern District of Indiana, appearance filed. United States of America versus Keith Hall. To the clerk of this court and all parties of record, I, the below signed, state that pursuant to NDIND LR 83.5, I have read and will abide by the local rules of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Indiana, including Appendix B, Standards for Professional Conduct within the 7th Federal Judicial Court Circuit. I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Enter my appearance as counsel in this case for defendant Keith Hall. Signed, David Kenton Payne, attorney. The same attorney that Neil Lockman had at the same time. Oh, it gets better. It gets better. Just wait. As I said, this was filed on June 25th, 2025. Neil Lockman produced child pornography and obscenity, then shared it with others, including 2 undercover agents, says the sentencing memorandum dated September 25th of 2025. A search of his home revealed over 55,000 images and 25,000 videos of child sex abuse material. He pleaded guilty to a 3-count information, sexual exploitation of a child, production of child pornography, and production and transportation of obscene material. For that, and because of multiple enhancements to the charges that the court decided made him a threat to public safety, Neil Lockman was sentenced to 54 years in prison. Has to do a minimum of 30, it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly. And those images were shared. He engaged in explicit talk and file sharing via Kik with an undercover agent. And thank goodness for that, says the court, because his communications about the abuse he exacted on certain victims showed no remorse, only more deviancy, and the risks to the third victim likely would have grown greater. Given his criminal patterns, it comes as no surprise that he is classified as a repeat and dangerous sex offender despite no prior criminal history of this type. A not unusual fact, says the court. A former 15-year police officer knows to respect the law. Neil Lockman destroyed the public trust to such an extent that his own department hid it from the entire community, as did the press, by the way. The local newspapers couldn't bring themselves to touch this beyond just a basic story. Because had they bothered to ask questions like we did, they probably would have discovered the connections to Keith Hall. Because Mr. Lockman forfeited 9 different devices, including cell phones, multiple laptops, and a hard drive, an external hard drive that contained 55,000 plus images and 25,000 videos. Videos that he took the time to set to music. And as somebody who does production, let me tell you, that takes time, a lot of time. This is so incredibly disgusting that a LaPorte County sheriff who worked with Pat Cicero and Andy Hynek could do this and violate 26 different victims from 2015 through 2025 it looks like. And then right after this sentencing memorandum is filed by David Payne, Neil Lockman's attorney from Michigan City, a name I know well, by the way. Right after that, David Payne then becomes the attorney of record for one Keith Hall. Let's talk about Keith Hall. Okay, before I shift away from Lockman and completely over to Hall, I want to share this part. There was an order for both men's cases to be continued. Okay? Both of these men waived their rights to a speedy trial in lieu of working out a plea agreement with the state of Indiana. And I think that's important for you to understand because in both of these orders, the judge cites the approval of these motions based on the public interest, the best interests of the public, and goes on to say that both of these cases pose such a risk to children within the communities in which these men lived and worked. That's why he was ordering the extension for both cases. So not only do we have, so far, we have 2 men back to back being accused of the same crimes in the same federal court. They live, according to Google Maps, they live 118 miles apart. At the time, they are committing identical offenses, okay? And they end up in the same court, charged weeks apart after Neil Lockman's 9 devices are seized by the United States government, and the recipients of those 55,000 messages, or those 55,000 images, and those 25,000 videos, where he specifically allocutes to using Kik in his plea agreement and other file sharing programs, end up somehow prosecuted by the same prosecutor, and I'll be damned, both men end up in front of the same judge as well. So listen, y'all wanted receipts, y'all wanted names, y'all wanted proof. Here you go. It's right here in black and white. You can purchase these just as I did and see for yourself. And if you choose not to, and you choose not to believe what you're seeing here, then I would turn inward and ask for some additional support in the area of critical thinking. And listen, that's not an insult. I'm not trying to make it sound like an insult anyway. This is right here in black and white. Okay? Everything that Prof's been telling you, everything that I've been telling you, everything that Chris has been telling you, and Noe and Reese, it's all right here in black and white. We're just the ones taking the time and investing the time to go find it and then present it in a manner that everyone can understand. You know, Chris says this all the time about this case, and she's so right. She always says no one person can absorb, let alone retain, all of the information, all of the data that's related to this case, because there's just too much. The tentacles run deep. And when the tentacles run that deep, there's no way one person can be accountable for all of that knowledge and all of that content and data. That's why when someone with no investigative experience starts questioning why Erica didn't do a family tree 2 years ago, it's because I'm a human being first of all, and human beings require sleep and downtime so they don't get burned out. I'm not going to sit here and justify why I didn't do 50,000 different things and why I only did 40,000 instead. That's just nonsense. Grow up. But all of these people are involved in the same cases. And these cases, these men lived 2 hours apart, 118 miles apart. But no, this isn't all connected, right? Okay, well, let's keep going and see what else we can find that might support our allegations about this case being solved on the back end. Shall we? This is the sentencing memorandum for Keith Hall. Number 1. The nature and circumstances of the offense. In August of 2024, law enforcement began an investigation into eight NCMEC cyber tips. For those of you who are unfamiliar with NCMEC and the Cyber Tips program, that is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And about maybe 10, 12 years ago, they created this program called Cyber Tips. And it's in coordination with NCMEC. It's under their umbrella, but you can go to report.cybertip.org or you can go to missingkids.org and it will take you to the Cyber Tip line, or you can just Google Cyber Tip. Anyway, let's get back to this. In August of 2024, law enforcement began an investigation into 8 NCMEC cyber tips. The NCMEC cyber tips were reported by Kick and, drum roll please, Dropbox between October 13th, 2023 and January 6th, 2025. The cyber tip provided associated emails and known IP addresses associated with the logins, and the IP addresses was associated, looks like they had a duplicate there, with the address of registered sex offender Keith Hall. Now, Keith Hall had already been in trouble. Keith Hall, in 2018, gets arrested for inappropriate sexual conduct with a child in Miami County, in Kokomo. Okay? In Kokomo. And he gets convicted. And guess where he goes? Until 2023. He goes to Miami County. Tell me again we're making this up. Tell me. Tell me that Prof and I are making this up. The Dropbox is the nexus. The Dropbox is the nexus. And it's also the reason why Prof and I and a few others are under complete assault right now. Because we really did solve this case on the back end. We really do have all of the pieces now to put together. See, the problem is people had no idea what we were looking for. And aside from that, there's that 10% from Reese Davis that Prof and I and others have held back. And that is because we needed time to put all of these pieces together. It takes hours upon hours to sit there and read through all of these different criminal cases, to pull them in different programs, to make the purchases of these documents, to sit there and download them into files where you can retrieve them easily and go back and look for things. This one show right now will take me probably 10 to 12 hours to do. So now we have Keith Hall out of Miami County, the subject of 8 cyber tips to the National Center, who is then rearrested in June of 2025, just like 2 weeks after Neil Lockman turns over his devices and forfeits everything to the state. You have the same U.S. attorney filing damn near the identical charges against Keith Hall as Neil Lockman. You have Keith Hall and Neil Lockman, who live 2 hours away from each other, 118 miles, but somehow yet they've retained the same attorney. Over the weekend, Alex sent me a message and asked me to identify definitively who I think is involved. Erica, are you saying it's Keegan and Ron? Are you saying it's members of the family? Are you saying it's the Vinlanders? Are you saying it's the cartel? Are you saying it's the pedos? And I didn't want to answer him in that moment because I was still putting the pieces together. And after the crap that happened Saturday night, Prof and I got so much more laser focused, and we really, really pondered how to go at this, and then the light bulb started going off. My answer to you, Alex, and to everyone else who asks that question is it's everyone. It's all of them. It's all of them, you guys. It is an underbelly of evil. It is an underbelly of trafficking. It's trafficking drugs and weapons and humans and CSAM and all of these things. And that is why Prof and I especially are getting so gaslit, because they're asking us to drill down and identify each player. That's what they want, okay? They want us to have to identify each player by name, show the details. I don't have time for all of that. And as patient and as tolerant as Prof is, I suspect he doesn't have time for that. Oh, but I do have time to put this together and show you what's been in front of us all along. It's just that I was too distracted by being run out of my home, falsely arrested, working 80 hours a week, taking care of children, taking care of a grieving adult daughter. Like, y'all don't know what we've been through. And then on top of it, they just poured additional salt onto those wounds. So I'm sorry it took me a while to get here. Oh, but when I say case is solved, man. We know what's up. Where the pieces are falling into place for us. And what I'm sharing with you today, that's just a modicum of what we know. A modicum, a small percentage of what we know. This is why they're out there spending their Saturday and Sunday nights trashing our names. And that is why we are spending our Saturday and Sunday nights supporting one another, reminding everyone that we know who they are versus what's being said about them. We're offering a community-wide support. Sorry, Prof. Sorry, not comfort, support. Because real men don't need comfort. And I support that. I totally support that. But we are doing a lot more conference calling. Everybody's in the zone over here. And that's why they're losing their minds. Because everybody is in the zone. Okay, getting back to the sentencing memo for Keith Hall. Search warrants were executed on Google and Kik accounts. There's that Kik again. And later Hall's, ding, 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 cell phone, showing a total of 168 videos and 18 images of child sexual abuse materials. On March 18th, 2025, Hall was called into the Miami County Sheriff's Office to re-register as a sex offender as required. Law enforcement provided Hall with his Miranda warnings, and Hall provided a statement. He admitted moving to Kokomo in 2024. He did not register in Kokomo, Indiana, or notify Miami County, Indiana, of his move. Hall provided the cell phone in his possession and admitted to utilizing multiple phones since his 2023 release from jail to access Kik and Telegram to talk to girls, and admitted the conversation turned sexual and he would receive child sexual abuse material. Specifically, Hall would use the Kik Finder application for Kik and Telegram search features to search for minor girls and would initiate contact. Is that an MO that rings a bell, y'all? Who else did that? That would be Keegan Kline out of Miami County also, who was also in Miami County Jail, who also used Kik to initiate contact with minor girls. Listen, we're not making it up. It's right here in black and white, folks. Hall admitting after fulfilling his urge, he would delete the images in chat. Hall also verified all email addresses associated with the NCMEC cyber tip and usernames as his. During the interview, law enforcement showed Hall several screenshots of videos from the search warrant returns. Hall identified the images and believed them to be girls he interacted with. Hall stated the conversations on Kik Messenger occurred in Bunker Hill, Indiana, between October 2023 and January of 2025. Now, there we go. I don't need to pull up all of this, but just for this one line, but Keith Hall ended up forfeiting that cell phone over to police. He was indicted, and they took possession of all of his Dropbox and Kik contents as well. He was sentenced to 210 months in prison, then additional yada yada. What we do know is that His case was prosecuted by Hannah Jones, the same U.S. attorney that prosecuted Neil Lockman's case. He retained the same attorney that Neil Lockman retained 2 hours away, 118 miles away up in La Porte. And that's David Payne. Facts. I'm not making any accusations here. Everything I've said here today is backed up by a document/receipt. Okay? So save the cease and desist letters, because I know how to report when I am going up against attorneys. Notice I have yet to receive a cease and desist from an attorney. You know why? It's because I'm following the law, and they hate that. I can walk up to that line and know exactly where to stop. And I know people are going to be angry after today. How do you think I feel? How do you think Rick Allen feels? Rick is sitting, languishing away in an Oklahoma prison cell because of all of this. Because a bunch of men, including a dirty, dirty cop, created all of these images. And then every one of these pricks rolls on the other, which that's what they do. They save themselves. They roll on each other. And now we've got this snowball effect out of the South Bend U.S. Attorney's Office with chomos being prosecuted left and right. Because there are more. There are many, many more. I have been trying to compile all of them, and it's hard. It's not hard because I can't find it. It's hard because I have too much. And so I have to sit there now and take an entire day or two just to lay out the timeline of all of these arrests throughout Indiana. We have known all the way back. So here's the other thing, okay? And I'm just stating a fact, guys. This is it. David Payne happens to be the law partner at the firm of Brady, Janes, and Nelson in Michigan City, 2-1 Christopher Willoughby. And Chris Willoughby was the attorney who was 1/3 of the ownership of the bar called Creekside Bar and Grill in Michigan City, where Tara Stevens was hit and killed, where Sharon Chappell then came forward and gave me the name of a suspected driver, and also then provided me with this tip about allegations of child exploitation taking place, and I do the right thing and send this tip to Unified Command. Not only is Tara gone, but then Sharon is gone? Oh no. You have pissed off my girls. I'm telling you right now. Sharon ain't having this. Tara ain't having this. And Erica sure as hell ain't having this. All of this is happening because a bunch of men in Indiana can't keep it in their pants around kids. And everybody they've sent in to destroy us is so desperate to do so that every time they open their mouths, either on a YouTube or in a comment section, they let something slip. So I guess we will just have to keep tolerating this nonsense as we get stronger and stronger each day, because I'm telling you what, y'all are not running Prof off this case, and you're not running me off this case. That's a damn promise. I will prop that man up and make sure he knows how good a talent he is to keep him going, because he challenges me to be better every day. Challenges me to get back into this fold and do these types of presentations right here. That is what we need. We need a team of strong collaborators who don't participate in the drama and the bullshit and the nonsense and the drunken weekend mean girl sessions. The rest of us adults are over here trying to get Rick Allen out of prison and take down a bunch of really nasty chomos. I knew this would be a long episode today. I expected it. I knew I was going to throw a lot at you. And now I have to finish putting all of this together, and it's going to take hours. So I'm going to end it here because we have a lot yet to do. I say that every show, but that's because every time I turn off the microphone, I'm working for the rest of the day and night. I cannot thank everyone enough who has come forward with information. I know I have a lot of emails yet to respond to, and just please bear with me. I'm not ignoring you. I have so many emails to get to and messages. And I am reading all of your information, I promise. If you haven't seen a receipt yet or a confirmation that I've read it, that I just haven't gotten to it yet. And please don't take offense to that. I am one person, and I also know myself well enough right now to know that self-care is important, that I need to take breaks and go out into sunlight, even if it's freaking cold as heck, and just get away from this computer, because what we're dealing with here is so much bigger. It's so much bigger than anyone realizes. And I don't say that to be offensive. I say that because our minds continue to be blown every day as we continue to put all these pieces together to keep sending this information off. And some folks have gone in and tried to bait me about, hey, have you filed the RICO stuff yet? Some of it's been sent, yes. Some of it has not. We are still we're making all of these connections, like this stuff that I've laid out for you today. All of this has just been finalized over the last couple weeks. So every day, more and more data is uncovered because these content creators have such vital information that Chris and I were never privy to. We have such vital information to which they were never privy. I continue to say it's working like a well-oiled machine, and it really is. So that's how I feel about that. I love you all so very much. Every one of you who is here for Rick and these girls, I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I pray for you. I pray for your safety, for your peace of mind, and for you to know that we are the same voices out here. We are the ones putting each foot forward, each foot in front of the other to go forward every day. I'm just grateful to have a collaboration from such fine individuals, such intelligent individuals, people who are working behind the scenes on multiple family trees who have no idea what we're looking at right now. I would just say, for those who aren't here for the right reasons, I encourage you to do some soul searching. I encourage you to take care of yourselves, because there are a lot of people out there right now who are not taking care of themselves, and it shows. Let me worry about Erica. How about instead of everybody going out and asking about Erica and why this and why she didn't do this and why she didn't do that and why is she doing this? I've got her back, okay? I've got her. Nobody loves Erica Morse more than Eric Morse, okay? I've got her, and she's got me. So everybody have a great week. I know you'll be hearing from Prof this week, probably sooner rather than later, which is why I want to push this out now. I don't want to interfere with his mojo and what he's got cooking, because this is important. This is an important prelude to what he's about to show you. And I want everybody to be able to take the time to go back through this and then jump into what he's dialing down into for you. So anyway, have a great week. I love you all very much. Thank you for everything. Support independent journalism. Listen, we invest a lot of time and effort and energy and expenses into this. So if you want to support independent journalism, we'll take it. And there's no shame in my saying that for the ones who say otherwise. Y'all have a phenomenal week. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure that your friends in LaPorte County see this and Stark County see this and Miami County. Make sure people down in the Kokomo area and Peru see this, because we are still digging through all of these names and all of these connections, and I know people out there can bring forth more information to us, more details that will help alleviate even more research on this back end. But anyway, y'all have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. Peace, love, and light. And I will be back to dig up more dirt. That's a promise. Be safe out there. Words matter.